The phone hadn't rung in 7 years. 7 years of silence. 7 years since my father slammed the door and declared I was no longer his daughter. But tonight, at 2:47 a.m., his voice cracked through the darkness like thunder, and he was begging. "Phoenix, please, your brother. He's trapped behind enemy lines. You're the only one who can bring him home." The same man who called me a disgrace for choosing the Air Force over his law firm was now on his knees, pleading with the daughter he disowned. The daughter who had just become the youngest female squadron commander in Air Force history. The daughter whose call sign was whispered in Pentagon hallways with reverence and fear. But he didn't know that yet. None of them did. My name is Phoenix Blackwood, and the day I destroyed my family's legacy was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. It was graduation day at Harvard Law School, May 2017. My parents sat in the front row, my mother's Chanel suit pristine, my father's chest puffed with pride. The Blackwood family had produced lawyers for 4 generations. I was supposed to be the 5th. Instead, I walked across that stage, grabbed my diploma, and announced to the world that I was enlisting in the United States Air Force. The silence in that auditorium was deafening, but nothing compared to the explosion that followed at home. "You're throwing away everything we built for you," my father roared, his face crimson with rage, flying planes like some reckless child with a death wish. My mother's tears fell like broken pearls onto the marble floor of our Connecticut mansion. "Phoenix, darling, please reconsider. The Air Force is no place for a lady. You'll be surrounded by those people. Those people. As if serving your country made you less than human." My younger brother Marcus stood in the corner, silent. He'd always been the golden boy, captain of the lacrosse team, student body president, already accepted to Yale Law. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "I've made my decision," I said, my voice steady despite the hurricane in my chest. "I'm reporting to basic training in 6 weeks. That's when my father said the words that shattered my world. "Then you are no longer my daughter. Don't ever come back to this house. Don't ever use our name. You're dead to us." The door slammed. The locks changed. My trust fund froze. In one moment, I went from heiress to homeless. But I had my dream. And sometimes, that has to be enough. Basic training at Lackland Air Force Base was hell designed by angels. Every morning at 4 a.m., every night collapsing into bed with muscles screaming and lungs burning. But while other recruits cried for their families, I had nothing to lose and everything to prove. My drill sergeant, Technical Sergeant Rodriguez, was a bull of a man with eyes like laser sights. He smelled weakness like a bloodhound and destroyed it without mercy. But he couldn't break what was already broken. "Blackwood," he screamed in my face on day 15. "Why are you here? Daddy cut off your allowance?" I stared straight ahead, sweat dripping into my eyes. "To serve my country, sir." "Wrong answer, princess. Try again." The other recruits watched, waiting for me to crumble like the privileged girl they assumed I was. Instead, I dug deeper. "To become the weapon my country needs, sir." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe. Or recognition. Better. "Drop and give me 50. I gave him 100. Graduation came 8 weeks later. I stood there in my dress blues. No family in the crowd. No one to pin my wings. But I felt more pride in that moment than I ever had wearing designer gowns to charity galas. Flight school at Vance Air Force Base was where I found my calling. The T-6 Texan II became my horse. The sky my battlefield. While other pilots struggled with the mental calculations, the split-second decisions, the crushing G-forces, I soared. My call sign came during a training exercise gone wrong. Another pilot's engine failed during a formation flight, and he was heading straight for a populated area. Without hesitation, I guided him through an emergency landing in a field while simultaneously radioing for emergency response and keeping 2 other aircraft from colliding. "That girl flies like a phoenix rising from ashes," said Colonel Martinez, watching from the control tower. "Phoenix, that's her call sign." The name stuck. And slowly, that broken girl from Connecticut died, and Phoenix Blackwood, Air Force pilot, was born. The years flew by like contrails in the wind. I specialized in combat search and rescue, flying into impossible situations to bring heroes home. Each mission carved me into something harder, sharper, deadlier. Afghanistan, 2019. I was flying an HH-60 Pave Hawk through hostile territory when we got the call. A Navy SEAL team was pinned down in a valley surrounded by Taliban fighters. 3 other rescue attempts had failed. It was a suicide mission. I was the only pilot willing to go. We came in low and fast, using the mountain ridges for cover. Enemy fire lit up the sky like deadly fireworks. My crew chief took shrapnel in his shoulder but kept manning his gun. My co-pilot's hands shook on the controls, but his voice stayed steady on the radio. We extracted all 6 SEALs under heavy fire, with 2 of them critically wounded. The mission was impossible. We did it anyway. That's when the whispers started. Phoenix doesn't fail. Phoenix brings everyone home. But the mission that changed everything came 2 years later. Syria, March 2021. Intelligence indicated that 3 American contractors had been captured by a terrorist cell near the Turkish border. The area was a hornet's nest of hostile forces, surface-to-air missiles, and international complications. The Pentagon called it unrecoverable. Too many variables, too mmany ways to die. They called me anyway. I was leading a flight of 4 aircraft, my Pave Hawk and 3 Apache gunships for escort. We went in at 200 hours, using a moonless night and advanced stealth technology to slip through enemy radar. Everything went wrong from minute 1. Our intelligence was compromised. The enemy was waiting. We flew straight into an ambush that turned the sky into a hell of tracers and explosions. 1 Apache went down immediately, its crew lost in a ball of flame. The second took heavy damage and had to abort. I was alone with 1 wounded Apache and a crew that was bleeding and scared. That's when I made the decision that would define my career. Instead of aborting like any rational pilot would do, I went in anyway. My gunner laid down suppressing fire while I landed in the middle of a firefight, under heavy enemy fire, with missiles screaming overhead. We found the contractors in a bombed-out building, beaten and barely alive. My crew loaded them while I kept the helicopter steady despite taking multiple hits. My fuel gauge was dropping, my engines were overheating, and enemy reinforcements were closing in. We had 30 seconds before being overrun. I pulled pitch and climbed through a storm of bullets and rocket-propelled grenades. My tail rotor was damaged, hydraulics failing, but we made it to friendly airspace with all 3 contractors alive. The Pentagon classified most of the mission details, but the parts they didn't classify made me a legend. By 2024, I was Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix Blackwood, commanding officer of the 41st Rescue Squadron. At 31, I was the youngest female squadron commander in Air Force history. My wall was covered with commendations: the Distinguished Flying Cross, the Air Medal with Combat Device, the Purple Heart from that Syria mission. But I was still dead to my family. I'd built a new family with my squadron. These men and women would follow me into hell because they knew I'd lead them out. We called ourselves the Phoenix Squadron because we specialized in rising from impossible situations. Life was good, difficult, dangerous, but good. I had purpose, respect, and the satisfaction of knowing I saved lives for a living. Then came the phone call that shattered my carefully constructed world. I was in my quarters on base, reviewing mission reports, when my secure phone rang. Unknown number, but the prefix was familiar: Connecticut. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Lieutenant Colonel Blackwood speaking. Phoenix? The voice was older, broken, desperate. It took me a moment to recognize it. My father. 7 years of silence, and now this. Please don't hang up, he said, and I could hear him crying. My father, who never showed weakness, was sobbing into the phone. What do you want? My voice was ice. It's Marcus. He's been captured. The world stopped spinning. Marcus had followed the family plan perfectly. Yale law, then corporate law at a prestigious firm. But apparently, success wasn't enough for him. He'd joined Doctors Without Borders 2 years ago, providing legal support for humanitarian missions in conflict zones. Noble, dangerous, stupid. He was in Somalia, my father continued, his voice breaking with every word, helping establish a medical clinic in Mogadishu. His convoy was attacked 3 days ago. The other aid workers, they didn't make it. But Marcus, the kidnappers took him alive. My hand gripped the phone so tight I thought it might crack. What do the authorities say? They say it's hopeless. The area is controlled by Al-Shabaab militants. No government forces, no way in, no way out. They said, he choked on the words. They said to prepare for the worst. And the State Department? They're doing everything they can through diplomatic channels, but His voice faded to nothing. I knew what that meant. Diplomatic channels were useless when dealing with terrorists who saw American hostages as bargaining chips or propaganda tools. Phoenix, my father whispered, and I heard 7 years of regret in that single word. I know I have no right to ask. I know what I did to you was unforgivable, but you're the only one who can save him. You and your people. Your people. The same phrase my mother had used with such disdain 7 years ago. Now it was spoken with desperate hope. Please, he begged. I'll do anything. I'll give you everything. Just bring my son home. I closed my eyes and saw Marcus as he was the last time I saw him. 21. Full of potential. Too afraid to stand up to our father. The brother who watched in silence as I was disowned. But also the brother who used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms. Who made me friendship bracelets when we were kids. Who cried when I left for college because he'd miss me. I'll see what I can do, I said finally. Phoenix? His voice was small, broken. Thank you. I hung up and stared at the phone for a long time. Then I made another call. Colonel Martinez, it's Phoenix. I need to see you immediately. It's about a rescue mission in Somalia. The briefing room at Special Operations Command was filled with the kind of people who made impossible missions possible. Colonel Martinez sat at the head of the table, his weathered face grim. Around him were representatives from various Special Forces units, intelligence analysts, and mission planners. And me, the woman who had just volunteered to fly into one of the most dangerous places on Earth to save the brother who watched me get disowned. Gentlemen and lady, Martinez began, nodding to me. We're here to discuss Operation Phoenix Rising. Lieutenant Colonel Blackwood has requested permission to attempt a rescue of American civilian Marcus Blackwood, currently held by al-Shabaab militants in south-central Somalia. The intelligence officer, a thin man with tired eyes, spread aerial photographs across the table. The target is being held in a fortified compound, approximately 50 miles northeast of Mogadishu. The area is completely under militant control. No friendly forces within 100 miles, sophisticated air defense systems, and an estimated 200 fighters in the immediate area. In other words, said a Navy SEAL commander, it's suicide. I leaned forward. I've flown into worse. Have you, Colonel? The SEAL's eyes were skeptical. Because this isn't just enemy territory. This is medieval fortress surrounded by people who would love nothing more than to shoot down an American helicopter and parade the crew through the streets. Then we don't get shot down, I said simply. Colonel Martinez studied the maps. Phoenix, I understand this is personal for you, but I can't authorize a mission with this level of risk for a single civilian. The probability of success is less than 20%. Sir, I stood up, my voice steady and clear. With respect, you didn't authorize Syria either. You told me it was impossible too. That was different. Those were military contractors, and we had partial intelligence support. This is my brother. The room went quiet. Everyone knew my story, the girl who walked away from everything for her dream. But they didn't know about Marcus. Sir, I've never asked for anything. I've flown every mission you've given me, saved every life you've asked me to save. I'm asking now. Give me a team, give me a window, and I'll bring him home. Martinez looked around the room at the other commanders. Some shook their heads, others looked thoughtful. Finally, he sighed. What do you need? I had 72 hours to plan a mission that most experts considered impossible, but I had advantages they didn't know about. First, I had the Phoenix Squadron, 12 of the most skilled combat pilots in the Air Force, men and women who trusted me with their lives because they knew I valued their lives more than my own. Second, I had friends in the Special Operations community who owed me favors from previous missions. Third, I was completely insane with determination. My team came together like pieces of a deadly puzzle. Captain James Hawk Morrison would be my co-pilot, a steady hand under fire and my closest friend in the squadron. Technical Sergeant Maria Santos would handle the rescue hoist and provide medical support. She'd kept more wounded soldiers alive than any medic I knew. For ground support, I called in favors with SEAL Team 6. Lieutenant Commander Rick Stone Patterson owed me from Afghanistan, where I'd extracted his team under impossible conditions. He volunteered himself and 3 of his best operators. The mission plan was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its audacity. We would use a single MH-60 Blackhawk, modified for extended range and equipped with the latest stealth technology. We'd insert the SEAL team via fast rope into the compound at 300 hours local time, extract the hostage, and be gone before the enemy knew what hit them. Simple, clean, probably fatal. "You know this is crazy, right?" Hawk said, as we went over the flight plan for the 20th time. "Crazy is my specialty," I replied, checking our fuel calculations again. "Your brother better be worth it." I looked up at him. Hawk had been with me through dozens of missions. He'd seen me make impossible decisions and pull off miraculous rescues, but he'd never seen me doubt myself. "I don't know if he is," I said honestly, "but I know I can't live with myself if I don't try." He nodded. That was enough for Hawk. That was enough for all of them. We launched at 2100 hours from Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti, flying low and dark across the Horn of Africa. The Black Hawk had been stripped down to essentials, extra fuel, medical supplies, and enough firepower to fight our way out if things went bad. The flight to Somalia took 4 hours, most of it over hostile territory where a single mistake meant death or capture. I flew by instrument, using terrain-following radar to stay below enemy detection, while Hawk monitored communications and Santos prepared the medical bay. In the back, the SEALs were silent, focused, deadly. Stone had briefed them on the compound layout, guard positions, and extraction plan. They knew the odds. They came anyway. 30 minutes to target, I announced over the intercom. "Copy." Stone's voice was calm, professional. "Team's ready." Mine? I thought about Marcus. Wondered if he was still alive, if he was scared, if he regretted following his conscience into this hellhole. I thought about my parents, sitting in their mansion, waiting by the phone for news that might never come. Mostly, I thought about the promise I'd made to myself 7 years ago, to become the weapon my country needed. Tonight, that weapon was going to save my brother. The compound appeared on our night vision exactly as intelligence had described it, a rectangular fortress of concrete walls and guard towers, surrounded by open ground that offered no cover for attackers. Thermal imaging showed approximately 40 fighters inside, most of them asleep, but not all. "I count 6 roving patrols," Santos whispered, studying her scope. 3 fixed positions with heavy weapons. "Piece of cake," Stone said dryly. I brought us in low and fast, using a dry riverbed for concealment until the last possible moment. The compound's walls loomed ahead like the gates of hell. "Going hot," I announced, and pulled the Black Hawk into a steep climb over the compound walls. Everything happened at once. Stone and his team fast-roped into the courtyard while Santos laid down covering fire from the door gun. Muzzle flashes erupted from guard positions as militants realized they were under attack. The night exploded with gunfire and shouting. "Building secured!" Stone's voice crackled over the radio. "Searching for the package!" I held the helicopter in a hover 30 feet above the compound, rotors whipping dust and debris into a blinding cloud. Tracer rounds zipped past my windscreen like deadly fireflies. "Taking fire from the east wall," Hawk called out, his voice tight with concentration. "Suppressing!" Santos opened up with the door gun, her tracers walking across the guard positions in deadly streams of light. "Package located!" Stone's voice was triumphant. "He's alive, but in bad shape. Need immediate extraction." That's when everything went wrong. A rocket-propelled grenade streaked past our nose, missing by inches. The explosion behind us lit up the night and shook the helicopter like a toy. "RPG, RPG." Hawk was scanning for the shooter. "There," Santos pointed to a rooftop 200 meters away. "Second building, northwest corner." I pivoted the helicopter and Santos unleashed hell. Her door gun turned the rooftop into splinters and smoke. "Phoenix," Stone's voice was urgent. "We need to go now. Reinforcements approaching from the south." I could see them, headlights racing across the desert toward the compound. We had maybe 3 minutes before being overrun. "Coming down." I dropped the Black Hawk into the courtyard, landing hard on the packed dirt. Stone's team emerged from the building, carrying a figure between them. Even in the darkness, I recognized Marcus. Thinner, beaten, but alive. My brother was alive. They loaded him into the helicopter while Santos provided covering fire. I was already pulling pitch when the last SEAL jumped aboard. "Go, go, go!" Stone shouted. I climbed straight up, clearing the compound walls just as the first enemy vehicles arrived. Gunfire erupted behind us, but we were already racing north toward the coast and safety. Marcus was unconscious for most of the flight back to Djibouti. Santos worked on him in the back. IV fluids, pain medication, cleaning and bandaging his wounds. He'd been beaten, starved, but he was alive. He's stable, Santos reported. Dehydrated, multiple contusions, but nothing life-threatening. He's going to make it. I felt something break open in my chest. Relief, joy, and something else I hadn't felt in 7 years. Family. We landed at Camp Lemonnier as the sun was rising. Marcus was rushed to the base hospital while I debriefed with intelligence officers. The mission was classified immediately. Officially, it never happened. But Marcus was free. I sat in his hospital room as he slept, machines beeping softly around him. He looked like the little boy I remembered, vulnerable and peaceful. The brother who used to build blanket forts with me and share his Halloween candy. When he finally woke up, his eyes were confused, searching. Then they found mine. Phoenix? His voice was a croak. Hey, little brother. He stared at me for a long moment, taking in my uniform, my rank insignia, the confidence that 7 years of military service had built into my bones. You came for me, he whispered. Of course I did. You're my brother. Tears ran down his face. I'm so sorry, Phoenix. I should have stood up for you. I should have fought Dad when he threw you out. I was a coward. You were a kid, and you're here now, fighting for people who need help. That's not cowardice, Marcus. That's heroism. But I got captured. I screwed up. I reached over and took his hand. Marcus, I've rescued Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, and CIA operatives. Getting captured doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. He squeezed my hand. I heard them talking about you, you know. The other prisoners before. He swallowed hard. They said there was a pilot they called Phoenix who never left anyone behind. I never dreamed it was my sister. Your sister who flies planes like some reckless child with a death wish? I smiled. He laughed, then winced at the pain. Yeah, that sister. The phone call to my parents was the hardest conversation of my life. Mr. Blackwood? This is Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix Blackwood. Your son is safe. The silence stretched for an eternity. Then I heard my father collapse into sobs. Thank you, he managed between gasps. Oh God, thank you. Will he be all right? He's injured but stable. He'll make a full recovery. Where is he? When can we see him? He's at a military hospital in Germany. He should be transferred to Walter Reed in Washington within the week. Another pause. Then quietly, Phoenix, I know I have no right to ask this, but would you be there when he arrives? Would you come home? Home. Such a small word to carry so much weight. I'll be there, I said. Walter Reed Army Medical Center was buzzing with activity when I arrived in my dress blues. I'd flown commercial from Germany, sitting in coach like any other passenger, my medals hidden beneath a civilian jacket. My parents were already in Marcus's room when I arrived. They looked older, smaller somehow. The years had carved worry lines around their eyes and silver into their hair. They turned when I entered, and I saw their shock at seeing me in uniform, really seeing me. The ribbons on my chest, the wings on my collar, the confident bearing that came from command responsibility. Phoenix, my mother whispered, look at you. I wasn't their little girl anymore. I was a combat veteran, a squadron commander, a decorated officer who had just pulled off one of the most audacious rescue missions in military history. Mom, Dad. My father stood up slowly, his eyes taking in my uniform, my rank, my bearing. This was the daughter he'd disowned for choosing the military over law school. I owe you an apology, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I owe you 1,000 apologies. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. He stepped forward, his hands shaking. I threw away the finest daughter any man could hope for because I was too proud and too stupid to see what you really were. And what am I? I asked. He gestured to my uniform, to the ribbons representing valor and sacrifice and service. A hero. You're a hero, Phoenix. And I'm the fool who was too blind to see it. Marcus smiled from his hospital bed. Dad, meet Lieutenant Colonel Phoenix Blackwood, commanding officer of the 41st Rescue Squadron, also known as the woman who just flew into Somalia and saved my ass. My mother was crying openly now. All these years, she sobbed, we thought we'd lost you, but you were out there saving people, serving your country, making us proud, and we were too stubborn to see it. You didn't lose me, I said quietly. You just forgot where to look. My father stepped forward, and for the first time in 7 years, embraced his daughter. "I'm so proud of you," he whispered. "I'm so sorry it took me this long to say it." As I held my father, feeling my family slowly knitting itself back together, I thought about the journey that brought us here. The girl who walked away from privilege and comfort to chase her dreams. The pilot who learned to rise from ashes. The commander who never left anyone behind. They'd laughed at me once, called me reckless and foolish. They'd mocked my choice and disowned their daughter. But when the moment came, when everything was on the line, they called the woman they'd rejected. They called Phoenix. And Phoenix always comes home. The phone that hadn't rung for 7 years would never go silent again. Because sometimes, the people who underestimate you the most are the ones who need you the most. And sometimes, the daughter you disown becomes your only hope. My name is Phoenix Blackwood. I rise from ashes, and I bring everyone home, even the family who forgot I existed. You know what hurts the most? Almost nobody hits that subscribe button, and honestly, that's the only help I need from you. It's free, it takes 2 seconds, but it means everything to someone like me who was thrown away by her own family. Right now, you felt something listening to my story. You felt that moment when my father finally saw who I really was. Don't let that feeling fade away. If my story touched your heart, if you believe that people who are underestimated deserve to have their voices heard, please, just hit subscribe. Because there are so many more stories like mine out there. Stories of people who were laughed at, rejected, forgotten, until the moment they became someone's only hope. Your subscription is the only way these stories reach the people who need to hear them most. The people who feel invisible. The people who've been written off by everyone who should have believed in them. Don't scroll away and forget. Subscribe now, because sometimes the smallest act of support changes everything. And trust me, I know what it feels like when nobody believes in you.